All right. So Gary and Brooke are off. Dottie is holding the receiver.
No, but here we are. We're all thinking, my God, we open tomorrow. We've only had 2 weeks to rehearse. We don't know where we are, but my God, here we are.
That's right, sweetie. Isn't that right, Lloyd?
Beautifully put, Gary.
No, but I mean, we've got to play Des Moines all the rest of this week, and then Pittsburgh, and then God knows where, and then God knows where else, and so on, for God knows how long, and we're all feeling pretty much, I mean, aren't you?
Sorry?
Anyway, Gary, you're off and Dottie's holding the phone.
Sorry, Lloyd, but sometimes you just have to come right out with it,
I know.
Thanks, Lloyd.
Okay, Gary, so you're off.
Lloyd, let me just say one thing since we've stopped. I've worked with a lot of directors, Lloyd. Some of them were geniuses, some of them were bastards, but I've never met one who was so totally and absolutely, I don't know.
Thank you, Gary. I'm very touched. Now, will you get off the fucking stage?
Welcome to part 2 of our Noises Off episode. But before we go into real talk, it's time for PP, our patron pitch. This will let our patrons know what they can expect in their exclusive patron feed. We also let non-patrons know what they're missing out on. So welcome to the month of July, patrons. As you know, all of you, regardless of the tier, have access to our cutting room floor segments and to our bonus episodes. Cutting room floor stuff, I'm sure that there's plenty, not just from this episode, but from past episodes. We are recording way in advance, so we're also editing way in advance. You'll get some stuff. The bonus episode for this month is on the movie The Misfits, assigned to us by Ben Murray, who gave us 3 options, and we decided to go with the Marilyn Monroe one. Alex, you said you were leaning towards that one, and I said that's cool, because that's also where I was going.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen it before, or was it just a blind spot you wanted to take care of?
No, that's why I wanted to do it, because I haven't seen it before. And if I remember correctly, it's Marilyn Monroe's last movie, and Clark Gable's in it. And also, if I have my history right, it's why the Misfits, Glenn Danzig and Jerry Only, Doyle, that's why their band name is the Misfits, is after that movie, if I'm remembering history correctly.
Okay, well, if you want to know if Alex is right or wrong, I'm sure we'll discuss it once we finally get to record that episode. But that will be out sometime this month of July.
Yeah, and then they're playing the original Misfits lineup, or at least with Danzig, Jerry, and Doyle are playing in Austin in August, which I've already acquired my ticket to. So it all matches up.
You can ask them. You can just go backstage and ask them.
Oh yeah, I'm sure Danzig would really appreciate anyone trying to talk to him about anything.
Also, all patrons have access to the chat. I'm bringing it up right now because if you were on the chat, you got to see a picture of my recent outing to the Paramount Theater with patrons and friends Eddie, Jordan, and Kinsey. We went to see Jackie Brown and got somebody to take a picture of us afterwards, and it was a lot of fun. Jackie Brown, I was telling Alex off mic, might have jumped over Inglourious Basterds on my Tarantino ranking, which would make it the number 2, right under Pulp Fiction. So, interesting. I need to rewatch Inglourious Basterds now to see how it holds up. But I think Jackie Brown just gets better and better the older you get. The closer to Max Cherry's and Jackie Brown's ages you are, the more it resonates with you, I think.
It's a great film.
So that's something that everybody has access to. Now, if you want more stuff, you need to be on the next tier, the Winonis, the $3 tier. And then you get our pre-recording notes, you get our quick video reviews. This month, Alex, we are going back to anime, courtesy of Katie and OT. They are tasking you with watching Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. That's a mouthful of a title. 90% Rotten Tomatoes from 1985. And I am watching Porco Rosso, 96%, 1992. Both Studio Ghibli movies, both, if I'm not mistaken, directed by Hayao Miyazaki. So one of the big names, maybe even the biggest name when it comes to anime features. I'm sure I just pissed somebody off by saying that, but should be interesting. I haven't seen either of those, Alex, and actually I'll make it my mission to watch both Nausicaa and Porco Rosso before I watch your video. That way you don't spoil it for me. But
there you go.
Going back to the anime well, which we visited for the first time when we did the Your Name episode a few months ago. And then, of course, that tier also gives you access to Contrarians After Hours. That's the spin-off show where we usually tell you about other things that we're watching, reading, playing, thinking about But on the Bogdanov film episodes, we use the after hours to watch some more Bogdanov films. So, Alex, this time we are going with Saint Jack, 1979, 72% Rotten Tomatoes, starring Ben Gazzara, the bad guy from Roadhouse.
I think he would be okay being known as that. So, Saint
It's
Jack,
a good legacy.
Ben Gazzara, Denholm Elliott in that as well.
Oh, look at that.
Synergy right there.
Yeah. Ben Gazzara is also in They All Laughed, which is the subject of a previous After Hours that we haven't recorded yet. But Bogdanovich, he liked his ensembles. He liked his cast, his recurring cast members.
Mm-hmm.
So John Ritter, Ben Gazzara, Denholm Elliott, Ryan O'Neal up till the point when Ryan O'Neal started talking shit. A lot of returning players in his cast, and I think that makes it interesting. So Saint Jack will be our second Bogdanov film, I guess, of this outing. And then if you want to be one of those patrons that tell us what to do, like Katie and Oti, like Ben, then you go up to the $5 tier, the Embries, or the $10 tier, the Gads, and then you get to tell us, hey, do a video review of this, cover this on the main feed, cover this on the Patreon feed. You get some extra power to wield responsibly, of course, against the Contrarians. So go to patreon.com/contrarianprime, look at our offerings, look at our tiers, and see how you would like to join the Contrarian supplements.
$1, $3, $5, and $10 are respective tiers. Julio's outlined, what you get from that. And you also get access to the entire back catalog of all the mini-series and bonus episodes we've done since. So head on over and check it out. We have our current thresholds that once we cross, we'll be rolling out new patron-exclusive series. So now's the time. Give us one of your dollars, just one of them. It's $12 for a whole year. It probably comes out to like 14 with tax and shit, maybe even 15, but still, what are you going to do with $15? Can't even buy a case of beer for that much anymore. Sad times. The economy may not have your back, but the Contrarians do. And there's plenty that we offer for you to enjoy. So check it out. To our current patrons, love y'all dearly. And we're waiting for you new ones. Come on over. Let's party.
If we ever do another tier, Alex, it will be the Sardines tier in honor of Peter Bogdanovich.
Sardines! I forgot the sardines.
Lloyd, these damn sardines. We got to do something about them. We can't go on like this.
Sardines are something that I didn't appreciate until recently in my life, in my older years.
How do you eat them?
There's a very specific Gordon Ramsay recipe I follow. It's like a sardine spaghetti recipe, not with red sauce or anything like that. It's basically you get some tinned sardines, cut them into chunks, fry them in a pan with some chopped garlic and a chopped chili. Mix that up, and it kind of emulsifies and gets a bit saucy, and you can then stir in some spaghetti with it. And he has a recipe for it that takes 10 minutes to make, and it's fucking delicious. But sardines, I'm not going to be scooping them out of the can with my bare hand and force feeding them down my mouth, my fucking gullet like the bushwhackers. But there's plenty to do with it. I was always grossed out by it as a little kid. I like anchovies. I still can't do that. I was on a date years ago. It was at a nicer place. And when you make a Caesar salad, the proper way to make it is you put an anchovy in it. I didn't know that. Yeah. And when I took a bite of it, the anchovy was in it, and man, the poker face I had to put on for this girl that was there. It was unbelievable. Sardines, not the worst thing to just kind of have in your cupboard at all times for, open in case of emergencies. And also it's a subject of a great episode of Futurama where Zoidberg's people wiped sardines, they eradicated them from the world. And there's one can left, and Fry gets into a bidding war with a billionaire over it.
Well, there's a lot of sardines in this movie.
That's the point. They're cost effective. If they were doing that with filet mignon, I'd be well, that's just fucking wasteful. But it's sardines, And even then, you can just scoop them up and throw them out in the alley behind the theater, and the stray cats will come and eat it up. So it's all good. It's a renewable resource.
Yes, it's a circle of life.
Exactly.
You fish them, put them on stage, then give them to the cats. That's how it works. Alex, I have very, very scarce fresh quotes from the Rotten Tomatoes website, as mentioned in Contrarians Corner. This is one of those instances where the Rotten Tomatoes system is fully exposed as a fraud. And might as well just get into it. Let's get them out of the way because there's not a whole lot that they say. This is the level of discourse that you get if you go to the Rotten Tomatoes webpage for Noises Off. Our friend Ken Hankey from Mountain Express, Asheville, North Carolina says, okay film version of a play that probably works better on stage. Okay. But it's a theme, Alex, because James Sanford from the Kalamazoo Gazette says it was better on stage, but the movie isn't unwatchable.
Not unwatchable. That's a positive review, eh?
Yeah. Steve Crump from Kansas City, Kansas says works much better as stage vehicle, but loaded with stars and laughs. Now we have 3 in a row that have been like, oh, it's better on stage. The book was better. So finally we get to somebody that's labeled a top critic, because you have the fresh tomatoes, the certified fresh, but then also among the critics you can get your little red star that makes you a top critic. And such is the tale of David Anson from Newsweek, who's a top critic, and says it unavoidably loses some of its brilliance on film. Much of the fun was the suspense of seeing live actors survive the demands of the slapstick. But Bogdanovich's frenetic transplant supplies so many belly laughs it seems ill-spirited to complain. All right, well, that has a little more meat to it. And then we're going to close with Widget Walls from neatcoffee.com, who says, someone turned the farce up to 11.
It is a very exaggerated movie.
Yeah, but I wouldn't think, like, in the context of Bogdanovich movies and in the context of farces, like, I wouldn't think that this one is way over the top compared to the others, right? This is just, it's a play. Like plays by their own nature already kind of bigger than the normal. That's the whole point, right? The acting on stage is just, you have to project.
This is true.
And so that already sets the bar a little high as far as the level, the loudness of your performance. And then on top of that, well, it's a farce. And then on top of that, it's a director that's well known for making this type of, playing with this type of dynamics, this type of comedy. So I don't know that he's turning it up to 11 here. I think this is like a Bogdanovich 8, which is, on the Bogdanovich curve is fine.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you want to tackle this, Alex. My main thought, and we can start here or we can go somewhere else, but the main thought is like something that all these critics were saying and that David Anson kind of expanded on a little bit, and that is that I can see the argument from people that have seen it on stage that would tell you, okay, well, this is a poor substitute for seeing the performance live. And I mean, I've done that myself whenever on Patreon, we've talked about my trips to see musicals here in Austin. And then my experience watching those musicals whenever they are adapted to film, and the comparisons and so on. But you haven't seen the original play for Noises Off. I haven't either. So we don't have that experience. How do you feel when somebody says that? I mean, is it even worth bringing up when you're talking about Noises Off? It's like, what's the point of making a movie of a play that is very much about the experience of watching the play live, right? Like what David Anson was saying. It's like, well, the fun of it is seeing people, live falling down the stairs and going in and out of doors. It's like, oh, if you're doing it in a movie, well, it's trickery because you're cutting and you're, resetting and you get to do it again and again. You're not doing it with a live audience. So it sounds like they're all complaining, that it's not as good or that it cheapens the experience. I don't have a problem with it. Maybe I would if I'd seen the play, but I can tell you that watching it just like that, I'm like, no, I think that it captures the chaos and the energy of a live performance.
Yeah. And then it becomes like, why was Annie a movie? Right, Annie was a play first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And a musical. Think of, if that's your argument, think of how many classic films would be gone if you're just like, well, you should just see it as a play. I think the argument here is that it's more the play comes across better than the movie, I guess is kind of what you're saying and what they're saying.
That's what it feels to me, that they're saying, well, because it's a play about a play, it really works on a different level when you're watching it perform live as opposed to watching a movie, because, can a movie capture that experience? I think it can, the experience of watching something live.
And it is always funny too, movies about making movies. If you dig deep enough, I'm thinking like My Week with Marilyn or like The Disaster Artist or something, like there's people do get annoyed with that concept of like, I'll just watch the movie, it's, yeah, but that's kind of the fun of what they're making here. And we talked about this a little bit with Glengarry Glen Ross. Yeah, it's clearly a play, and we were curious what the play would look like, and the movie moves as such, and the performances are kind of, they feel more like a stage performance, so to speak, than something that would happen behind a camera. But yeah, I think that's just kind of a closed-minded way of viewing it.
And God said, hold it! And they held it, and God saw that it was terrible.
I'm ready to bet a fair amount of money that says you enjoy this movie substantially more than I do. None of my issues could come from the fact that I was thinking like, man, this is probably plays better as a play. I was just watching the movie and being like, this isn't funny. This is just, I really want this to move along. This was a tough one. It took me 3 sittings to get through it.
Wow. Like
Yeah.
I knew that it wasn't going to be good when you said that you'd rather watch Jaws the Revenge before this one.
Well, that was kind of me joking around and having fun. I mean, it's true, but it's, we walked away from that movie talking about how it was one of the more insane things we've ever seen.
I was going to say, I can't believe that you don't find this funny. But at the same time, I had a very similar reaction to What's Up, Doc, which you liked a lot more than I did.
Yeah, that one's still weird. I can't. We're not here to talk about What's Up, Doc. That's over on our Patreon. Go give us $1 and listen to it. But
well, just to put it to rest, though, my problem, at least as I could identify it in What's Up, Doc, was that I didn't like the characters. Right, like I could appreciate that the performances, right? Barbra Streisand and Ryan O'Neal they were doing what they were supposed to be doing, but I just found the characters very irritating. Was that an issue here, or was it just that what they were doing was not funny?
Yeah, that. Now, don't get me wrong. I did laugh out loud several times. Like, whose theory is that? I feel like I sound so unintelligent. The gun in the first act. Who had that?
Oh man, is it Chekhov? Chekhov's gun?
Thank you. Yeah, Chekhov's gun. That if there's a first act and you have hung a pistol on the wall, then in the following one it should be fired. Otherwise, don't put it there. This is a very truncated version of that philosophy. But when they brought that cactus in and it was shaped very phallically, I was like, someone is getting that up their butt and or vagina. And Michael Caine just bent over, just ripe for the taking. And his sell job on that was so funny. And, that's the fucking, ape in me. The Jackass fan. And that made me laugh. But what makes it funnier is he gets it in the butt and then he turns around in anger. He goes to throw it. So he grabs it with his bare hand. And that's like, that makes it funny. That's the real punchline of it. And when he walks in, he's like, what the fuck is going on? Like that made me laugh out loud. And the first like 30 minutes is really fascinating to watch. The problem was when I figured out that I'm going to have to sit through like that exact same thing 2 more times. The ending is really funny. Like we said, that joke about the ending of the play. It's like, wait, how did they get here? And
right.
The crowd chanting along and stuff. The shots, because they're going to, for those of you who haven't seen it, the whole first act of rehearsal is there's 2 levels to the set that they're on. It's kind of not unlike the Jailhouse Rock musical sequence in Jailhouse Rock, in that there's 2 levels and the camera, it's obviously some sort of crane shot they're doing when they follow some people up, and there's extended sequences of like 1 shot, you know what I mean? Of following the characters upstairs and then the camera coming back down. And it's technically fascinating. I do. Yeah. We'll stick with the comedy for right now. And before we move on to like individual performances, everyone's like giving it their all. It's just, it didn't really click with me. The way like a What's Up Doc did, or even something like, Nickelodeon I enjoyed more than this. And, you obviously were higher on that than I was, but
Yeah.
And I will say, I'm not going to say something ridiculous like Illegally Yours is better than this. This is
A movie.
a movie. Well, I don't know. We need to know how the people of St. Augustine feel about Noises Off, but it's fitting. Texasville's sandwiched in between them, but it's fitting that those movies came out in the within the same 5 years to show kind of the two sides of that coin of Bogdanovich trying to make something kind of funny and quirky with Illegally Yours that just doesn't work at all. And then this, which does, it's just I ran out of patience too quick for it. But like, if you're really into what they're doing, I could see this being a very enjoyable experience. Like I said, my biggest issue was when I figured out that this is what the movie is. My brain immediately goes into how many more times we're going to go through the same thing over and over and over and over and over. And which in the end, it's only like 3 times, but because it's so long and drawn out that's why it took me 3 sittings, because I figured out what the movie was. It's like, all right, now I'm going to come back to it. But chat me up, Julio. I saw your Letterboxd review that was from previously.
Yeah, that was my memory of it. First, I want to say that what you're saying reminds me of some of the criticism I've seen and I've heard lobbied against one of my favorite movies of all time, the Steve Jobs biopic with Fassbender as Steve Jobs, because the structure of that movie it's basically 3 days in the life of Steve Jobs, and I've heard people say, actually Eddie might be one of them, saying, well, it kind of gets repetitive, right? Like, because there are 3 different product launches. And so, the first third of the movie is him launching the first iMac. And then the second day is like, all these years later, he's doing a different computer. And then the third day is him launching the iPod. And you have the same characters, but it's like years after, Jeff Daniels, Kate Winslet, they show up as people on his team, and how they interact with him, how he's changed, how he hasn't changed, and all that stuff. And so I see that as one of the positives of the movie, which means that, it doesn't surprise me that it doesn't bother me. Noises Off either. I like that structure. I like the structure where you set something up and then we're going to see a variation of that and then another variation of that. Like, as long as the variations are entertaining, I'm all in. Because I remember, I would see those criticisms about Steve Jobs and I would just nod and be like, that's what makes it good. That's why I like it. Because he said this thing in the first third, and then he says it again in the second third, and then he says something different in the third, and so on, And so
I'm sure a devil's advocate could jump in too and give me shit for like complaining about that, but then something like Source Code is a movie that I revere greatly.
Right. Yeah. Look, Source Code, I couldn't come up with any examples in Contrarians Corner, right? The Source Code is a movie that does what I was saying that this movie does very well. And I was being serious in Contrarians Corner. The idea that you have a lot of payoffs, but you have to set them up. And so many writers, I think, struggle in the setup part of it. Like, I think that didn't bother you because you're saying that the first 30 minutes were like, you were really in. So it's not a problem of it was boring getting through the setup so I could get to the payoffs.
God, I love tech rehearsals.
She loves tech rehearsals. Isn't she just, Christ, she loves tech rehearsals. Dottie, where's Dottie?
Everyone's always so nice to everyone.
Isn't she just, she really is, isn't she?
So when I got 30 minutes in, or 20, when I started to figure out like this was going to be reoccurring, I thought the whole movie was going to be a full rehearsal of the play. And then at the end, I expected the ending to be what it was, where Michael Caine walks in and it's all good. But so I was on board with it at first, and then I turned on it, and then I kind of came back. so that's where we're at.
I think source code benefits in a way
It's
because
awesome.
well, it's awesome, but also it's much shorter. Like the loop is much shorter. So I think that kind of maybe makes you, I guess it could work both ways, right? It could be that the loop is so short that the repetitiveness can hit you harder. Because like, well, I've seen like 10 of these now. But I also feel like because the loop is so short, the variations come up more often, which means that you don't have time to get bored because something new is coming at you. So I don't know. I like source code a lot.
Yeah, it's like 7 or 8 minutes is the loop in that.
Yeah.
This is 30 to 40.
Yes. But it's I like, look, I'm glad in a way. I'm not glad that you didn't like the movie, but I am glad in the sense that means that it's not just two of us praising the movie and kind of recycling a lot of Contrarians Corner, because my problem with Contrarians Corner was that I was having a hard time being positive about it in a way that was not going to reflect a lot of what Real Talk is like. Like a lot of my talking points in Real Talk are just basically toned down versions of what I was saying in Contrarians Corner. And partly is because this entire time that I've been thinking about this movie, I was thinking this recording was going to be about a fresh movie and we're going to trash it. So I really had to adjust my mindset for Contrarians Corner once I saw what the tomato meter rating was.
59% to go back to it. If just in case you didn't listen to the first half, it's 59%. So it is below the fresh threshold of 60.
It's a green splotch with its like handful of reviews. Just shameful. just don't put a score when you have, I don't know, 20 reviews and half of them are broken links. Get your shit together, Rotten Tomatoes. But I like that they're very different in the way that they're presented, like these 3 segments, right? Like the rehearsal is very straightforward. The second half is mostly backstage and a good chunk of it is silent. And then the third segment is just absolute madness. Like anything goes. So I think that it makes them so different that I don't feel the repetitiveness. I or at least not in a bad way. I anticipate it. I just can't wait to see what happens. How are they going to handle this gag in this different segment now, right? Like, oh, in this segment, John Ritter is being an asshole and sabotaging everyone. So how's that going to play out? You know, and in this segment, Carol Burnett just doesn't care. She's just improvising and throwing the play in different directions. How's that going to play out? So I like all that stuff. And like I said in Contrarians Corner, I think that one of the most rewarding aspects of it is that you get to see how they react to this as actors. And so when Christopher Reeve freezes, it's so fucking funny because, you know, he has his fall and he hurts himself and Mark Lane-Baker replaces him for one scene. But it's like when Christopher Reeve comes back on stage, he is not aware that Mark Lane-Baker already did one of those scenes. So he comes out and he's like behind on the story. So he comes out and starts saying his lines, and then John Ritter and Nicholas Sheridan are at the top. So then he realizes that he's not at the right spot in the story, and he freezes. He looks at the audience, and then he goes, "Sorry." Then he runs backstage, and he does that like 3 times. God, that stuff is amazing. I just enjoy that interaction so much. But also, Alex, I have nostalgic attachment to this. I mean, I watched it when I was a kid. I mean, I don't know. It was like a VHS rental. My parents rented it, and they thought it was funny. They told me I would enjoy it, so I watched it. And then I just remember I must have like recorded it, made a copy of my own, because I remember watching this movie numerous times, and I was actually surprised by how much of it came back as I was watching it today. Like lines of dialogue, John Ritter going, "Don't panic, don't panic." Like that's been living in the back of my head, and I wasn't even aware of it until
unlocked your schema. You were like, I remember this.
Yeah. There's some lines that Mary Lou Henner has that also, they just sounded so familiar. And even though I haven't seen this movie in at least 20 years, I can't, I watch it, and there's some parts that they're like almost cringy for me. once he gets to the third iteration and everything's gone off the rails, and Martin Lou Henner is trying to make sense of them having like three burglars, and the sheik shows up and she's like, oh, they're getting married and whatever. I mean, it's really stupid and it doesn't make any sense, and it's meant to be stupid and it's meant to not make any sense. But I find it a little closer to being cringy than being funny. But it doesn't matter, because overall I have just this baked in appreciation, I think, for it, that I would just forgive it anything, because all the other things that work and all the other things that I remember working. And then on top of that, you have the cast. This Bogdanov film journey has not even reignited, but I guess more like reminded me how much I appreciate John Ritter as a performer, even more so than when we did Sling Blade, because Sling Blade was not your typical John Ritter performance. I was just like, oh yeah, he's great, and I'm glad that he's great in this dramatic role, right? But this is a John Ritter that I grew up with. The Three's Company John Ritter slamming his face into doors and tripping and falling and stuttering through a punchline. I mean, that kind of stuff is like what I know him for. And so to see him in a movie where he's doing that and he's doing it so well, Mark Linn-Baker, I did grow up watching Perfect Strangers. So I get to see him in a movie. He gets to do some funny stuff. Carol Burnett, again, it's not like I'm the biggest Carol Burnett fan. I do remember watching her show like late at night, because it was just like one of the few things that was late at night. And I remember, her and what's the guy from Weekend at Bernie's and that Friday the 13th movie that I haven't seen yet?
Terry Kaiser.
Terry Kaiser. He was one of the cast members of the Carol Burnett show. And, that's where I know him from, before I even knew him from Weekend at Bernie's. So see her there, I was like, oh yeah, that's somebody I know, and she's funny here. So there's a lot of stuff I think that plays on my my enjoyment of this movie, on top of the fact that I think it's just a good movie. There's all that extra stuff that you don't have, because, you didn't live my life, Alex.
That's fair.
Lloyd, you know how stupid I am about moves. Sorry, Gary. Sorry, Brooke. It's just my usual dimness, but why do I take the things into the study? Wouldn't it be more natural if I left them on stage?
No.
I just thought it might be more logical somehow.
No.
Well, I do want to say I didn't dislike this movie. You had kind of mentioned that, or said something like you liked it and I didn't, which is I didn't dislike it. I just wanted to be fair in saying I was assuming and correct in that you enjoyed it a lot more than I did. I don't know how quickly I'm going to return to this, but it was an interesting movie to watch. I found numerous parts of it funny, but specifically the one thing I do want to call out as like, that's what I was kind of talking about in Contrarians Corner, and it's true. The Christopher Reeve performance in this is very fascinating to watch. And was that on an After Hours when we were talking about Henry Cavill?
Yes, it was when I was telling you about the Guy Ritchie movie.
Yes. So y'all that aren't on Patreon are going to have to penny over the dough to hear that conversation. But it's like Julio and I kind of have like this, oh my God, like realization in real time of like, if you play Superman or Jesus, it immediately limits what you can do afterwards. And I knew that about Jesus, but like we started going down the list of actors that played Superman and we're like, son of a bitch. And Christopher Reeve never, of course, it was a much, much, much different time in respects to this, the ideology of superhero movies. And, does that mean you're really acting, or is that just a separation to make money? And, the great discussions, and by great, I mean hilarious / annoying, that came about of Robert Downey Jr. and Oppenheimer. And the people that would say, oh, it's so great that he's back to acting. And, dude, there's not anyone you're going to find that shits more on what the MCU's done to movies than me. But that's such a dumb thing to say. And that is just that I will check out of your point just as quick when you say that as if you say, like, his best stuff is when he's Tony Stark. It's like neither of those things are fucking true. And so, this conversation wouldn't have been had. This wouldn't have been like, oh man, he's given up the bag to go to make these fucking art house movies. He's
right.
Christopher Reeve. It wasn't that. He wasn't going from Superman to working with Scorsese or Christopher Nolan or something. And And so because of that, there's this very unassuming and very under-celebrated aspect to this. And I wasn't kidding. I really am going to watch that Switching Channels movie, because he had some roles in a couple things along the way during his run as Superman, but he was Superman. And this was after the last Superman movie he did, and working with someone like Peter Bogdanovich, like there has to be a modern equivalent there of, like, these cats today. I would say that's similar to Downey doing Oppenheimer, but still Nolan did superhero movies. So just the idea of this guy getting an opportunity to flex what he's capable of on screen as an actor, and his performance is so charming in that respect of he's not going for it in the sense of like it's, he's emoting and being overly, dramatic or trying to make a statement with his performance or anything, but he hangs in there with everybody else in this movie. And he wasn't an accomplished comedic actor anywhere near as much as the other people he was involved with here. I just think it's a really interesting footnote. And I think it's, you're also talking about something that you and me, the majority of people who listen to this podcast, they know what I mean about, like, putting yourself in the mindset of watching this in real time. A lot of people don't give a shit about that and can't do that. So, a lot of people would watch this and be like, yeah, whatever. But for me personally, that was my biggest takeaway from it, was the Christopher Reeve performance and thinking about where he would have been and, what he was trying to do as an actor. And what I think is most interesting is in this movie, he's not trying to go above and beyond or separate himself from the pack. He's just trying to show that he belongs. Yeah. And that to me that's the most interesting, like, story about this movie.
I remember seeing it as a much younger person that wouldn't have, the thought of like, oh, clearly he wants to separate himself from Superman. To me, it was just like, oh, that's cool. He has done other things besides Superman. Mm-hmm. But I didn't see it as this is part of his agenda to separate himself from the character, which now I do, right? Like all these years later, of course, because we've seen it happen with other actors, other characters, and also because I guess it kind of makes sense when you look at it as an adult. It's like, oh yeah, that kind of thing weighs on you. And there was just a much more innocent lenses I was looking at it through. It was just like, oh, look at that. Christopher Reeve does other things besides being Superman. Kind of like the same thing about John Ritter, right? Like, to me, John Ritter didn't make movies. John Ritter was the TV guy from Three's Company. Yeah. And then I see him in a movie and I'm like, that is fascinating. That's so cool. I don't have much experience with Marilu Henner. I've seen maybe 2-3 episodes of Taxi ever. So really, this movie is probably the most I know of her. And then Nicola Sheridan, I've never seen her in anything else. I've never seen Beverly Hills Ninja. Alex, sorry. Is she good in it?
Well,
your silence speaks volumes.
Yeah, the problem with that is you have to say that anyone is good in Beverly Hills Ninja, which I think that's come up on the podcast before. I have a very, very strong sentimental attachment to that movie. And Will Sasso is good in that movie. There you go. There's someone who's good in that. But and the line in that movie, "Some say it is so." It's one that I quote pretty regularly. I don't think when she was taking instruction from Peter Bogdanovich in a movie with Michael Caine, Christopher Reeves, Carol Burnett, that she was anticipating in a few years her career would take her to taking instruction from Dennis Dugan, and she would be standing opposite Chris Farley and Will Sasso. So that's not a good movie.
Well, hopefully she's a Doctor Who fan, so she could geek out about Doctor Who's Will Sasso.
Oh, God. Good one. I always forget about that. I was listening to an interview with him the other day, and I listened to a 30-minute interview with Will Sasso and completely forgot that he was in that fucking movie with his curly hair and his boyish charm.
So do you know Marilu Henner? I brought it up because those are the two performers that I am not familiar with. Because even Julie Haggerty, I know her from Marriage Story. Did you ever watch Taxi?
I've watched a few episodes just to kind of familiarize myself with the characters. So in conversation, if I ever need to pull it out, I can. And yeah, this was only Nicolette Sheridan's third film, and she was sporadically active. Marilu Henner, however, aside from Taxi, I do specifically, she provided the voice of Veronica Vreeland in the not anywhere near as good, but still very good Batman animated feature, Batman Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero.
Oh.
So that's something I think of as just kind of that's random as fuck.
Yes, but inland revenue. We must have our little talk first about inland revenue. Because you're thinking something like, if inland revenue finds out we're in the country even for one night, bang goes our claim to be resident abroad, bang goes most of the issues. Leave those downstairs.
I don't expect you to remember this, Julio, but this is her second appearance on the Contrarians, as she had a cameo as herself in Man on the Moon.
Of course she did. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That weird choice by Milos Forman to have the actual actors play themselves. They look 30 years older, but they're playing their younger versions.
Letterman in there, like, nope, not wearing any of that shit.
Yep.
Looks like also she, not just for that movie, but did a few episodes of the animated series as well, for Batman, that is, which is very cool. Very random, but very cool.
That's cool. Even the first time I watched it, I think I knew she was from Taxi. So to me, it was kind of the same as the John Ritter scenario, where I just saw it as, oh, there's this TV actress making the jump to do a movie. But then because I didn't see him in other movies, my assumption was that the jump was not successful. That they just went back to TV. And now I know that that's not necessarily how it works. But I am not familiar with her career.
All right. Well, then tell me about Denholm Elliott, Julio.
He's Marcus Brody, right? That's his name in the Indiana Jones movies. He's not in the second one, so he's in the first one and the third one, and then I think they kill him off screen in the fourth one. Or is it only Sean Connery that dies off screen in the fourth? Whatever the case, he's in the two important ones, Raiders and Last Crusade, and he is great. I know him from that, and that's enough, right? He is. Right. I don't know how much you remember about his character in the Indiana Jones movies, but he plays a variation of the character that he plays here because he's kind of this absent-minded dude. He's ill-equipped to go in the adventures that Indiana Jones goes on. And in the first movie, that's not an issue because I think he's just in the setup scenes. But in Last Crusade, he's there with Indy and Sean Connery. And so he's part of the action. He's like this British dude that has no business being there. The other thing I remember about his career is he is in a Woody Allen movie, one of those early Woody Allen dramas. And I remember him being good in it, but what I remember the most is that there were two dramas that Woody Allen made back to back. One of them, I think, is September. I don't remember the name of the other one. And so for the first one he made, he needed an actor that could speak with an American accent. And so Denholm Elliott, somebody told him, hey, call Denholm Elliott. He can do it. And so they're on the phone and he tells Elliott, hey, I'll give you the part, but you need to be able to do an American accent. And Elliott goes like, oh yeah, I can do it. And Woody Allen goes like, okay, well, do it over the phone. And so Denholm Elliott does it. And according to Woody Allen, it was a terrible American accent. So he didn't give him the part, but he told me, you know what, we'll work together at some point. And so then he cast him in the next movie he did. And that's where I know I've seen it. I honestly don't remember much about it. It's one of those very serious black and white Woody Allen dramas from early in his career when he was trying to stop making comedies. So I don't think it was very memorable, but I remember him being good. Like, at least based on everything I'd heard about that movie, I was happy that he came in and he did a good job. But to me, he's Marcus Brody. And then when I see him in Noises Off and he shows up, it's like, oh, it's like an older, daffier version of Marcus Brody. And that's fine. That's all I need from him in this movie.
May I make just one suggestion?
What's that, Selsden?
Would it perhaps be better if I came on a little earlier?
Selsden.
Only there does seem to be something of a hiatus between Freddie's exit and my entrance.
Well, then let's move on to our feature player here, Michael Caine. Michael Caine. I mean, what are we going to say about Sir Michael Caine that hasn't already been said? My God, my man's in his 90s.
Is he officially retired?
When he wasn't an Oppenheimer, I took that as a sign that he was out the game.
There's a meme. Have you seen that meme where when you go see a Christopher Nolan movie and Michael Caine is not in it? And the meme was like, where is Michael Caine? Did something happen to Michael Caine?
So the thing I would say about his performance in this is if he wasn't having fun doing this, it speaks to how great of an actor he is, because it seems like Michael Caine was having a lot of fun with this, and his goofiness and just kind of his overwhelmed, his incredulousness at certain points is very infectious. And, he, in the times I would get bored or just kind of like, all right, let's go. And like I said, I did space this out, but still, in the times where like things start to drag, he would do or say something or make like a mannerism and be like, oh, we're back, baby. So I think Michael Caine is a bundle of joy in this movie. What did you think about his performance?
Yes, I like him a lot. It's one of the early Michael Caine movies I watched. So of course that's something, but it's not one of those things where, oh, this is so different from the characters he usually plays that it would later be a shock to see movies, other movies of his. This is the Michael Caine that I associate. When I think Michael Caine, I think of this, and it's not miles removed from like Alfred or the guy from The Prestige or his character in Now You See Me, or what, mature actor Michael Caine. Like, I've never delved into the early years of Michael Caine. I don't know if you have. And I think that maybe that would be more of a culture shock. But this is the Michael Caine I grew up with. And he's really funny. He said that you can tell he's having fun, or it looks like he's having fun. And that reminds me that I really like those cutaways every now and then during the rehearsal where Bogdanovich will just cut to Michael Caine laughing. Like something will happen on stage and, oh, look, he's having fun. The director is just having a laugh.
There's also the point where like Christopher Reeve stops and is like, I just had a question. And Michael Caine goes, no.
Yeah.
And he's trying to like say, oh, I don't understand. No, he just keeps cutting him off. It's great.
Yeah. And he has that moment, his sort of Oscar clip that I called out in the Turner's Corner, and I really like it. It's worth mentioning in real talk when he slows down for a minute to explain the magic of theater and the magic of, I guess, farce and screwball comedy and so on. And he sells it. It's just good. It reminded me just very recently when we had that one scene with Paul Giamatti in My Best Friend's Wedding, right? Where he's a great actor. So he has those lines and he sells them and then he's out. The difference is Michael Caine sticks around for the rest of the movie. But still, they bring him to really punch this up, make sure that this moment lands. And then we can go back to laughing and having fun. But he's giving his little speech. Bogdanovich is doing his job. He's like pushing in with the camera slowly. It's good stuff. I like him a lot. I think he's really funny. I was not kidding at Turner's Corner. If I have a problem with the movie or a conflict, is that it surprises me that he gets this super happy ending. I feel bad for Julie Haggerty. I think she deserves better than, this guy that was cheating on her for who knows how long, and not just with Nicholas Sheridan, because she says in the second segment, she tells him, I know how you operate. I'm sure you have somebody else over there in New York.
I also thought there was like, I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm so desperate to want to believe in like the mystery of things. There's part of me too that like he could have just been making up the ending of it. Because he, has the thing about, there's part of the story I didn't tell you, but who cares? It's like, we were all wonderful. And he said, he said something about a miracle, right? In the closing monologue of it. So,
man, that's really dark, Alex. He's passed out.
Who do you think you're talking to, man? I've been going through a severe bout of depression, so the thing that brought me joy was going to see a 35mm screening and Dancer in the Dark. That's who you're dealing with right now, man.
So you just created this alternate ending where Michael Caine is just lying on the street, staring at the stars, drunk, imagining that
it's ambiguous. That's show business, though, man.
Yes, it is. But there's nothing in Peter Bogdanovich's filmography.
No, absolutely not.
I mean, I don't have a problem headcanoning this as like maybe, just because I love this movie. I think
way more in Peter Bogdanovich's wheelhouse is just the idea of like, well, it's the ending, so it has to be happy. So let's just do it this way.
It's that type of movie. It's that type of genre. And also, I see myself in the director, so I'm going to give myself a happy ending.
Poppy's wonderful. The baby's going to be wonderful. We're all wonderful. I'm wonderful.
It's fine, but if I put my critical lenses on, I'll be like, what's up with this dude?
Yeah.
He's not being held accountable for any of the shitty things he did before. And I guess we're all forgiving him because his play is a big hit.
Yeah, it's certainly not the ending you would think this movie kind of deserves or warrants, but it makes sense when we consider who we're discussing.
Yeah. So, Alex, moment of truth. What is your score for Noises Off?
Dead center C. That'll probably 2.5 stars, 3 stars, somewhere in that territory, but just dead center C for me. For the things I've put over in this real talk portion, I would recommend it to people. Just, I would say, hey, there's kind of like not a gimmick, but like, it's not a movie like in a traditional sense. There's this framing device to it, but there's a lot to be positive about in this one. So a very enthusiastic C. Are you still sticking with 5 stars as your previous review indicated?
I am torn. It's 5 stars in my heart. But I think that is realistically it's 4.5, which I know it's still way high for someone like you, but those little things that bother me about the end and those little things that bother me in the third act, like just when it gets a little too cringy, which is silly, because I wonder if I would have even thought about them if we were not about to do an episode. If I'm just sitting there watching the movie, I would. And I'll tell you this, Alex, I ended up watching this movie twice, and not because I usually like to watch them twice when it's a movie I haven't seen. In this case, it was more like I was really tired last night, so I knew I wasn't going to be able to watch it and take notes. I just wanted to lie in bed and watch something, and I already borrowed it from Hoopla, so I was like, let's just play Noises Off. Let's see if it's as funny as I remember. I'll fall asleep to the first act. I ended up watching the entire thing. I was really tired, and I couldn't stop watching, man. It was like it captured me, and then I watched it again today because I had to take the notes, and I laughed both times. I was actually bummed because I wanted to watch it with Kelly, but she was busy doing something, so I'm probably gonna watch it again pretty soon just to show it to her. So that sounds like it's a 5-star movie, but I am going to, for the sake of preserving the integrity of this show, not lose all my credibility. And because, perhaps more importantly, because this is really funny and it makes me feel happy and all that stuff, but it doesn't have the emotional weight of something like Paper Moon, right? So I have to consider it also on the Bogdanovich curve. So I'm gonna give it 4.5 stars. There you go. 4.5. I think the challenge now for our listeners is you need to watch What's Up, Doc? You need to watch Noises Off. And then you decide whose team you're on. Because Alex liked What's Up, Doc? Probably not as much as I liked Noises Off, but definitely a lot more than I did.
Oh, yeah.
So are you into the slapsticky Barbra Streisand, Ryan O'Neal kind of deal? Or are you more like with John Ritter and Christopher Reeve and Marilu Henner, Michael Caine, and all the other stars putting on a show? Just let us know. It'll be a friendly competition. And then at the end, whoever gets the most acolytes, I don't know, gets to make the other one watch Texasville.
Fair enough.
Bogdanovich themed. I don't know if you had access to any box office information, Alex, but I suggest we keep that for the warm-up video if it's out there.
Okay. Yeah. There's a teaser for you.
Sometimes we're good at this.
Well, what's up next, Julio?
What's up next is another PJ party. Alex, much like P-Bog, somewhat bounced back with noises off. PJ Hogan bounced back from Unconditional Love to Peter Pan. He went full IP and tackled Tale as Old as Time, in a way. That's Beauty and the Beast, but I think it applies to most... I was going to say Disney properties, but I know Peter Pan is, based on a book and so on. But yeah. PJ Hogan's Peter Pan. I think it's 2003. One of the first movie posters I took from Cinemark. I just started working there, and yeah.
That's a special distinction. I feel that.
Do you remember what your first one was?
No, but I'll try to remember in the time to come.
And then next on the P-Bog train, we're going to a movie that I hope remains fresh by the time we do it. It's The Cat's Meow, starring Kirsten Dunst. And I think Eddie Izzard plays Charlie Chaplin.
My God.
Yeah, it's already... There'll be a lot to talk about, but Kirsten Dunst, moving up in the ranks of Contrarians appearances. I've had her at least 4 times already. Good stuff. So those are your next 2 bits of homework. Are you ready to go, Alex?
Yeah, let's get out of here. Curtain.
Noise is off.
Noise. Welcome to our end credits.
Or as we usually call them, our perennial plugs.
We start off by giving thanks to the Festive Years who provide our opening and closing tracks. They kick us off with Last Stand and take us home with Summer of 99. Be sure to head over to thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
Our friend and fellow podcaster Hans Rothgieser is the man behind our logo and all the art you see related to our show. Reach out to him and let him know how much you like that little tomato. His email address is mildemonios@hotmail.com and his website is mildemonios.pe. That's MILDEMONIOS. You can also check out his podcast Nación Combi about Peruvian current affairs and Marginal about economy. Hans, thank you for all your support.
For those interested in the regularly absurd world of professional wrestling, Joe and the boys over at latenightgrin.com have you covered. Tell them the Contrarians sent you.
And we like to close with special thanks to our social media team of Zoe Perez and Corey Ari. Each of the social media accounts we mentioned in the introduction look as good as they do because of their work.
So that'll do it for this episode of The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.
How much money he makes a year.